If there's one thing the Bureau of Prisons does exceptionally well, I'm talking the best in class, best in the world, in my humble opinion, it is delaying and stalling and finding any logical, in their opinion, excuse to delay helping people get out of prison early. People who have earned the right to get out of prison early. I share this because, as many of you know, the First Step Act was passed December 21st, 2018. And here we sit, January 18, 2022. And finally, after more than 3 years, this law is getting implemented. Now, the Bureau of Prisons will tell you they have implemented parts of the law. Sure, they have parts of it that I guess are important, but not the most important part. The most important part, of course, is credits that prisoners can earn that can help them get home much more quickly. That was the stalling and delaying that is just pervasive around the Bureau of Prisons. It's the culture, but rather than bitch and complain and lament, well, we've got to power through it. And we've got to understand this law and how it's finally being implemented, because thousands of people are now getting released from prison, including people on our team, which is fantastic. So in this video, and by the way, thank you for joining our channel at Prison Professors. Please like and subscribe. And if you're listening to our podcast, thank you so much. So grateful that you're here. And we want to provide a lot of value, because I know if you're traversing this system, you want whatever you want. How do I get out of prison more quickly? And the First Step Act is integral to that process. It's massive prison reform it's massive reform, and it's going to help all of you, but you've got to understand it, and you've got to create the right record on the inside that will enable you to benefit from it. That includes avoiding disciplinary infractions, avoiding problems. When I was in prison, or when my business partner, Michael Santos, was in prison, there was no real mechanism to advance your release date. If you watch TV all day, that wasn't any different than writing or educating yourself. Staff didn't care. They couldn't really advance your release date. Maybe they give you a little bit more halfway house time or home confinement, whatever. But there was no real mechanism to earn freedom. By the way, speaking of earning freedom, you should grab a free copy of Earning Freedom at Prison Professors. That's the shameless plug for the book. It's free, just your time to read it. With that said, let's roll over to our trusted screen share. I'm going to make it a bit larger so everyone can see it. Every now and again, I get a nasty comment that says it's too small, I can't read it. I'm making it bigger. So let's transition into, finally, it's here after more than 3 years, big developments under the First Step Act. As I just mentioned, thousands of federal inmates began transferring. Still going to make it bigger. Thousands of federal inmates began transferring out of federal prisons in the last week as part of the provisions of the First Step Act. Big sweeping criminal justice reform. The people getting released from prisons are going to supervised release programs, home confinement, or transferred into residential community centers, also known as halfway houses. This was possible because the DOJ allowed the retroactive application of the First Step Act programming benefits. So even though this was signed in January 18, it's now December 22, there were people who feared that if they began to implement it, it would not be retroactive. Indeed, it is. That's why a number of people on our team have gotten their ankle bracelets off. Our clients are getting out of prison much earlier. Earlier today, a colleague on our team, Tina, who served a lengthy federal prison sentence, told me that a full year was cut off of her sentence because it was made retroactive to December 2018. It's a really great thing. That's what we're going to talk about in this video, because if you understand it, it's going to help you thrive, enroll in the right programs, and get out of prison or get home to your family. A big part of the First Step Act, and what most people are concerned about, is these earned time credits and productive activities. In a rule published in the Federal Register last week, the Justice Department finally detailed how earned time credits for federal inmates, prisoners I prefer to call them, under the First Step Act will work, this process moving forward. One of the goals of the First Step Act is to encourage people to participate in productive activities and programs to reduce recidivism. As an incentive, participation in such programs provides inmates a pathway for early release from prison. So they're still fleshing out, fleshing, I think it is, what programs will participate. When they talk about productive activities, well, it's kind of open-ended, right? It's not clearly defined what that program activity could be. What I encourage people to do is to enroll in all programs that could help them develop skills and values and whatever those programs may be. Yes, it can help them more time off, but also when it talks about productive activities, get creative. Try to teach your own course in prison. We have a number of people through a nonprofit we're affiliated with who will actually create products and programs that assist people going through struggle. We encourage clients to teach their course that they invested the time to create. Teach that course in prison. It's certainly better than scrubbing toilets and showers. So if you look at anyone on our team, we advocated for ourselves in prison. We didn't wait for something to happen. We were respectful, but we were proactive. So if you have something to contribute, if you have something to teach, in a lot of our clients' cases, these community service courses they create, put up a sign in education and say you want to teach it. Say you want to educate and inspire people in prison. It may initially not be your full-time job, but who cares? You're volunteering. It could then be part of what they call productive activity. You got to try. It's better than sitting in the TV room all day watching TV. That much I can tell you. Implementation of this part of the law, meaning the earned time credit and productive activities law, requires that the government define exactly what activities and programs qualify as productive activities under the law, understand so that inmates understand how to direct their efforts. It also requires that everyone understand how the government will calculate people's earned time credits and actually use them. Again, be proactive. Do not sit back and say, well, I'm going to wait to see what a productive activity could be. And I'm going to wait. I'm just going to hang out for a while and kind of chill and decompress. You know, I was fighting my case for 3 years. I'm tired. I'm stressed. And, it's, you know, I'm going to wait. You know, I don't know. Maybe I'll get around to it at some point down the road. Be proactive. Just do it. Take the lead. It'll help people. It'll help yourself. The real definition of a win-win. Do not sit back and wait for life to happen in prison. Be proactive. Try to create these productive activities. You never know how it will influence a case manager. And even if they say, well, that course you taught isn't technically a productive activity, they're going to respect you. And it could compel them to give you more halfway house time. It could compel them to grant you a furlough. The more positive you are, the more productive you are under this law, there are going to be benefits. We're dealing with human beings, which means it is a subjective process. In other words, if they like you, you're going to get more concessions. They don't like you, you're going to have some problems. You're going to stay in prison longer, and you're not going to be so thrilled. Be productive. Advocate for yourself. Do not sit back and wait for life to happen. Got to make it happen, man. You want to get out of prison and get home to your family. The First Step Act provides people the opportunity to earn time credits. Specifically, this is a big deal. Specifically, people can earn up to 15 days for every 30 days they participate in specific programs believed to reduce recidivism. Now, not every prisoner will be eligible for the 15 days, some gun charges, sex offenses, multiple repeat offenders, and so on. Certain crimes will not qualify. They may not be eligible at all or get fewer days. 15 days for every 30 days is a huge deal. You extrapolate that out. You do a year, that's 6 months. 2 years, a year. Are you impressed with the math skills? I do have a psychology degree from USC, but I'm able to do basic arithmetic. Let's try it again. 5 years, 2.5, 10 and 5. You get it? A really big deal. You get enrolled in these programs as I show off my math skills. I feel good about it. Some of the programs available as of now: anger management, money management. I just did the money management, kind of, 5 and 5. Drug education, criminal thinking, specific jobs, and apprenticeships. For example, Unicor could be eligible. You're working, you're getting paid. That could be a specific job that could qualify for additional earned time credits. These are things you want to prepare for and understand. To a degree, the prison you go to may influence what programs exist. Our team is frequently asked, what prison should I go to? Should I go to Miami or Pensacola or Lompoc or Atwater? In most cases, they're kind of the same. You got a $10 bill or 2 5s, you still got $10. I'm still doing the math. In this instance, you want to try to go to a prison, perhaps that's a little larger, that can offer more programs. Some satellite camps may have 50, 100 people. With COVID and staff scaling back, they may not have the programs that you need. That's why a number of our clients who have ended up in a low security prison have found it somewhat favorable, because you have 1,500 or 1,000 guys there, more education, more staff, more resources. So sometimes bigger prisons that offers more resources will then in turn offer more education. So you want to pay attention to the prison that you go to. As you know, at sentencing, you can ask for a specific prison. Under the First Step Act, they're going to try to send, when I say they, that's the Bureau of Prisons. Do you like the hand movement? It's part of the shtick here, part of the show. The Bureau of Prisons is going to try to send you to a prison within 500 miles of your release address. Not always the case. For example, we received a call from a family member whose husband surrendered to a prison. The day that he surrendered, we learned that someone he had cooperated against was in the prison in Alabama. They then said, you're not going here. There's someone you cooperated against. He then went through transit, unfortunately, for a while, and he's going to end up, it appears, I think in Miami or Edgefield. Generally speaking, you're going to try to be within 500 miles. The Bureau of Prisons never finalized, naturally. They've only had more than 3 years to figure it out. I suppose that's not enough time. You enjoying the sarcasm in this video? Please bear with me. Stick with me here. The Bureau of Prisons never finalized how it would calculate people's earned time credits and apply the credits towards early release from custody or probation. So that was frustrating, and part of the reason they delayed the implementation or how they would calculate these earned time credits. The delaying and stalling only meant that people would stay in prison a much longer period of time. So it's essential to get clarity on the programs that are available, who qualifies, and more importantly, after we've established the programs and who qualifies, that it's actually beginning to get implemented. And now it is retroactive to December of 18, which is a really big deal. A moment ago, I touched on staffing shortages. The latest announcement of a finalized rule published in the Federal Register came on the heels of significant complaints about the BOP's failure to implement the law as Congress passed in December 18. Indeed, the DOJ officer of inspector, I think that's a typo here in the blog, DOJ office. I'm going to fix it live here. Could it be officer of inspector general? In fact, the DOJ office of inspector general exposed the BOP's utter failure to apply earned time credits for tens of thousands of people who had earned them by creating or completing programs. To say the least, leadership has been missing at the BOP since Congress passed the First Step Act, and now the BOP director has resigned from his post. You can call it resigned, or you can call it getting fired. Of course, he will keep his nice government pension that you and I subsidized. He was useless. He was an embarrassment. He could hardly articulate himself. I don't know. When he went up in front of the Congress and the Senate, he said things. I'm thinking, how did this guy get to be the head of the BOP? Well, you don't have to have that much up here to be working for the BOP. There, I said it. It's out there. I can't take it back. Observers blame the staffing shortages plaguing the BOP for the significant delays in rolling out earned time credits throughout the federal prison system. Staffing shortages, it's a tough word, shortages, reduce the number of people available to teach the classes and supervise the apprenticeships and jobs that help inmates earn these time credits. I need to speak with our team. I don't like using the word inmates in blogs. That's a wrap. The DOJ says the BOP continues to hire people to address the staffing shortages. Indeed, when you go to bop.gov, it says we're hiring, even though you can apply there and get hired without having much of a brain. They primarily care that you don't have a felony record. You can have one to work there, of course, but most of the people who work there don't know what week it is, and they seem to get off or enjoy delaying, stalling programs that could help people get home more quickly because they enjoy seeing people in prison longer. It's a weird switch. It's the reason we don't call them correctional officers. We call them guards. They do a lot of guarding. Never really saw them correcting anyone. That just happened. Also, in recognition that there is a need to provide people with enough productive activities under the law, the DOJ now states that the BOP will increase the number of eligible programs. Yeah, no kidding. It's only been 3 years. Significantly, the BOP also now states that it will not punish inmates, prisoners, if they cannot participate in productive activities for reasons beyond their control. I mean, maybe they got COVID and they're in quarantine or something like that happened. Maybe they've got called to testify and they're unable to participate. So there should be some flexibility. To follow up words with action, the DOJ began implementing the final rule when the rule was made public in the Federal Register. Now, who is released? The first wave of mass release from federal custody involves people whose earned time credits exceed the days remaining on their sentence, or who are 12 months or less from release and have a term of supervised release. This category of people have their time credits calculated and applied first. Like a number of people on our team who are on probation or in the halfway house who had time left on their sentence have been getting credit retroactive to 2018. And of course, they're going to get more credit because they were in prison, enrolled in programming at the time the law was passed, and they were in prison during that time. So they're going to benefit. It's a very big deal here, how the Bureau of Prisons calculates earned time credits going forward. And by the way, for everyone watching, we're going to film a number of these videos on the First Step Act. We have I think we have 10 blogs or so in the queue. Everyone on our team that has just been released early from the First Step Act is writing a blog about their experience. In fact, we have several in the queue that I'll film in the coming days. This is going to be a longer, bigger video, but in time I'll really dive into the weeds specifically on who is released or how the BOP is calculating it, along with updates we're getting from all of our clients in prison. Indeed, we're getting scores of emails every day from clients through the CoreLink system, updating us, telling us what's going on, including some staff who are apoplectic that this is finally being implemented because they think people in prison should remain in prison and not come home. That came directly from a client who's serving time in Lewisburg. I found the message to be funny that the counselor supposed to counsel and advise is upset that people are actually going to be going home more quickly. I don't know, it's odd. Continuing on, how the BOP calculates earned time credits. The final rule resolves the central sticking point in the earned time credit debate, having to do with the question of how a person in prison earns a day of time credit, which can later become one less day in prison. Again, back to the math, 30 days of programming, 15 days of additional home confinement time. But what actually qualifies for a full day of credit? Is it an hour? Is it 2 hours? Is it 3 hours? These are things that were up in the air that we had to get resolved. The BOP wanted to set it up where it could be 6 months in order to qualify for like 1 day of credit. So they're trying to, again, delay and keep you in prison longer. And we began to get some clarity in January 2020. The Bureau of Prisons proposed that people needed to participate for 8 hours in specific classes, programs, or jobs to qualify for 1 day of earned time credit. This is a really big deal. So how long you need to participate in programming to get that credit. It seems so obvious when you read it, like, that makes sense. You may agree or disagree. It took so long to just get even some clarity, but many advocates and lawyers, as we articulate here, were outraged at the proposal, which in reality ignored the reality of how courses and jobs work in prisons. Again, they're going to break this law down where they can still say we're following it fine, but not really implementing the way that would get people home more quickly. Some days a person inside goes to their prison job for 2.5 hours, 5 hours or more. In prison, it varies widely from day to day. Staffing, prison count times, and other factors dictate how many hours an inmate spends at work on any given day, primarily for reasons beyond their control. That's true. There are people in prison who expect to work for 8 hours. The job may be done in 2 hours, and they say, well, that's a wrap. And the correctional officer whose job is to oversee the people working may say, I'm done here. There's nothing more to do. And the prisoners can be like, no, I want to stay for 8 hours, in part to do the work, they'll get paid, but also they want to get this earned time credit. So it's not fair that a prisoner should be beholden to a lazy staff member who doesn't want to do his job, or programs that they're too lazy to implement, or perhaps a prisoner is at a prison that doesn't offer enough programs, things that are out of his or her control. So I like the advocacy that's been taking place for the last 3 years, and you can expect the Bureau of Prisons to delay and stall as best they possibly can. Even to finally implement this, I'm sure ruffled a lot of feathers, as I'm hearing from people in prison. Instead, as we continue, the new rule rejects every 8 hours counts as a day approach as inconsistent with goals of the law. Our team at Prison Professors has said this for a long, long time. We've made it loud and clear. The goal of prison reform in the First Step Act has to focus on creating more, not fewer, pathways for people in federal prison to earn their freedom. The final rule unequivocally states that while in federal prisons, people will earn 10 days for every 30 days they participate in programs, and inmates who can remain in lower risk categories are eligible for another 5 days of credit every 30 days. Thus, lower risk inmates can earn up to 15 days for every 30 days they participate in programs and remain in good behavior. Here is how the Bureau of Prisons is now explaining to inmates what is a day under the final rule. Here we go. Under the final rule, a day does not mean the inmate must participate in 8 hours of programming to get credit. Rather, a day means a calendar on which the inmate is participating in whatever assigned programming takes place on that date. In other words, if a prisoner is assigned to and attending 3 programs that take place only on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, as long as the prisoner consistently attends on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays for a 30-day period, the prisoner will receive the credit. I'd encourage you to read this again, pause this part of the video. The good part about that is you won't have to hear me continuing to talk. Just read it. This reflects a change from the proposed rule made in response to extensive public feedback through the comment period. The definition of a day is practical. It makes it easier for a wide variety of programs to count towards earned time credits and allows more people to be eligible for release earlier if they put in the work. This kind of comes back to how I opened, right? Earning your way out, not sitting in the TV, waiting and bitching and lamenting about the program. So I'm not going to enroll in that program. My counselor or someone told me that it's not going to be approved. Just do it. Get out of the TV room. Get out of the chow hall. Get out of the gossip. Don't waste time in prison. You're going home soon. You're probably watching, if you're watching this, you probably don't have a life sentence. Prepare, think, create, earn your way out of there. Staff may not tell you they appreciate it, but they're watching. It's a subjective process. They're in a position to help you. This is a very important part of the, in fact, let's watch this. You ready to see technology? Watch this. Do you see that? I just put it in bold. That's how important it is. If you put in the work, it's different from how it used to be in federal prison, where it didn't matter if you watched TV or you slept and complained all day or you wrote a book, blog, and ran a business. It didn't matter. Things have changed if you put in the work. Of course, our team of prison professors overwhelmingly supports this approach as compared to the prior versions. Indeed, it is the only one thing that makes sense and is consistent with the language and spirit of the First Step Act. We're doing more, though. We're not done. I know that's a very long video, but it's important, especially if you want to learn how to get out of prison early. The First Step Act requires that the Bureau of Prisons do more. So while the final rule is a huge step forward, the DOJ and the Bureau of Prisons must do much more to realize the full vision of this law and letter and spirit. Issues that need immediate attention include inefficient space and staff for prison classes and programs. It's going to be hard to get the credits if there aren't enough programs. Revising the pattern and reassessing the risks and needs of all federal inmates, prisoners, using new standards. Under the First Step Act, Pattern, the prisoner assessment tool targeting estimated risks and needs, is a tool to assess all prisoners to determine if they present a high, medium, low, or minimum risk of reoffending. So far, naturally, the BOP's efforts are lacking. In truth or reality, the BOP has merely rejiggered its security assessment tool, which serves a different purpose to measure people's needs and risks of reoffending. That is inadequate. For example, according to many experts, security assessments tend to include racial bias. Responding to the initial wave of criticism, the BOP now excludes the age when a person was first arrested or whether the person was a self-surrender to prison. The current approach leaves many people behind. In addition, even with the BOP's tweaks, experts believe that the pattern tool still has many flaws and racial bias. The final rule that the Department of Justice just filed on the Federal Register indicates the BOP continues to elevate, that's not what I meant to say, evaluate the pattern tool with the help of outside experts. The statement adds that the BOP is working to take all steps possible to address and mitigate against racial bias or other disparities. That's kind of what you would expect, some happy talk from the Bureau of Prisons. They kind of issue all the right buzzwords and say all the right things, like the former BOP who was fired but technically resigned, said in front of Congress, as incoherent as he was, but the day-to-day activities really did not align, or it did not align with what he told policymakers. He's a liar. Conclusion. While we at Prison Professors are encouraged by these significant steps forward, the DOJ and BOP must do more. We encourage people in the prison system to take the bull by the horns and prepare themselves for productive, law-abiding lives upon release. In order to maximize everyone's chances to earn their freedom, the BOP has to consistently provide more programs and more access to programs that meet the criteria of the First Step Act. Still, defining what is a day's worth of earned time credit for people is a huge step forward, as evidenced by the thousands and thousands of people that suddenly qualify for early release on their programming and other productive activities. Well, there's a big 25-minute video here. So I'm going to close again with how I opened work. Work. Use every day in prison to prepare for the obstacles that await you upon your release. It will make your family proud. It will demonstrate to them that you can overcome, that you are going to be different than prisoners that bitch and complain, and that you are using this experience as a positive in your life, letting the time serve you rather than serving time. We're going to do a whole bunch of videos on the First Step Act, including really getting into the weeds. For now, I'm grateful you let our team share these new, huge, exciting developments with all of you. And of course, if you'd like to learn more and speak with our team, we're here. Put up a link in the YouTube description. Feel free to schedule a call with our team. Until I see you again, we wish you well, be safe, be healthy out there, and we're grateful you let us educate you. Bye-bye.